Sandy Jenkins made off with more than just the fruitcakes in the company he worked for. He was successful in stealing $16 million from this bakery in Corsicana, Texas. He used that money for personal purposes, such as paying off credit cards, such as shopping sprees at Neiman Marcus in Dallas, such as buying luxury items, for instance, bracelets, cufflinks, earrings, furs, handbags, necklaces, pearls, rings, and 98 watches. I guess he wanted to keep up with the time. He also bought a wine collection for $50,000, a Steinway piano for $58,000, and he made 223 private jet trips. In addition, he bought 38, count them, 38 vehicles, including several Lexus automobiles, a Mercedes-Benz, a Bentley, and a Porsche. So how was Sandy Jenkins able to take this money? I'll just give you an example of what appears to be going on in the articles that I have read. But Sandy would process a check to American Express, for example, for, let's say, $200,000. He'd set that up in the computer system of the company. He'd print the check out. Then he would go back into the computer system and void the check. Then he would enter a second transaction for the same dollar amount, $200,000 in this example, but it was made out to a legitimate vendor. That second check was never mailed. Only the first check was mailed. So if somebody looked at the general ledger, they'd see a check for $200,000, using my example, to a legitimate vendor. No red flags. So how could this type of fraud be prevented or detected? The way you prevent this type of theft is the person reconciling the bank statement should look at the cleared checks, look at the payee on the cleared check, and compare that information back to the computer records in the company. If that was done, it would be obvious that the cleared check to American Express, in my example, would not agree with the legitimate vendor that shows up in the general ledger. You may be thinking, well, gosh, that's a pretty simple scheme, and it is, but most fraud schemes are fairly simple. You know, somebody such as Sandy Jenkins will realize one day while he's sitting at his desk that he could do this and get away with it. I'm sure he was aware of who was reconciling the bank statements and how that was being done. So what happened to Sandy Jenkins? Well, he was convicted of this crime. He went to prison, and then he passed away there in jail. So a really sad way to end your life of stealing money, going to prison, and then passing away. In the articles that I've read about Mr. Jenkins, he seemed like a nice guy, as is often the case in fraud. Some of the nicest people steal. And so you always want to remember, disregard the personality of the person and look at the internal controls and make sure they are sufficient so that this type of theft cannot happen. So that's the tale of Sandy Jenkins and the $16 million fraud in a bakery in Corsicana, Texas.